Imperial Palace of Earth did not resemble a home. It resembled a warning. The structure stretched across what had once been Old Geneva before the oceans rose and the first fold gate split human history apart. Entire mountains of black alloy and white marble towered toward the sky beneath a permanent shield canopy that turned sunlight silver. Thousands of warships floated silently above the atmosphere in layered defensive formations. Orbital cannons rotated slowly through cloud cover. Every visitor entering Imperial airspace surrendered weapons 3 separate times before even approaching the palace district. The Empire called it security. The rest of humanity called it fear. At the very center of the palace sat the Hall of Dominion, a chamber so massive its ceiling disappeared into darkness above artificial stars. Hundreds of banners hung from the upper walls, each representing a major human world still loyal to the Empire of Earth. Most were beautiful, some were terrified, and a growing number were pretending. At the far end of the chamber, beneath a throne carved from ancient battleship metal and polished obsidian, Emperor Caius Vale shattered a crystal glass against the floor hard enough to echo through the entire hall. The council surrounding him remained perfectly still. Nobody spoke when the Emperor broke things. That was how people survived him. The giant projection screen before the throne replayed the same moment again. Kenny Rain standing bloodied in the arena, bare-handed, calm. "I am different." The recording paused there. Caius Vale looked murderous. 26 kills. His voice carried softly through the hall. That was somehow worse than shouting. He killed 10 contestants without weapons. Nobody answered. The Emperor rose slowly from his throne, tall, silver-haired, elegant in the way venomous creatures often looked elegant. The public across the Empire adored him. Official broadcasts portrayed him as the wise guardian of humanity, the man preserving peace between planets after the chaos of the Fracture Wars. The broadcasts never showed the political disappearances, the orbital famine blockades, the engineered rebellions, or the prison moons hidden beyond mapped systems. Peace, the Empire had discovered long ago, was easiest to maintain when fear wore ceremonial clothing. The Emperor walked down the steps beneath the projection screen. Every member of the Imperial Council lowered their eyes. Not out of respect, out of instinct, because Caius Vale had executed 3 council members publicly last year for disagreeing with him during a military hearing. One of them had been his cousin. The projection replayed Kenny's speech again. "I'm not the story they sold you." The Emperor stopped walking, then slowly turned toward the council. "Explain to me," he said softly, "how the hidden son of House Rain has become the single most popular contestant in Eclipse history." Nobody rushed to answer. At the edge of the chamber stood a man dressed in dark gray advisor robes lined with gold data threading. Lucian Voss, Imperial strategist, master political architect of the modern Eclipse system, and Lyra Voss's father, though almost nobody inside the Empire knew that part. Lucian stepped forward carefully. His performance exceeded predictive modeling. The Emperor looked at him. "That is bureaucratic language for failure." Lucian inclined his head slightly. "Yes, Your Majesty." The projection shifted again. Kenny's opening ceremony appeared this time, the sword spinning through the air, the kick, the blade embedding itself beside Lord Rain's head. The Emperor narrowed his eyes. That moment changed everything. Lucian nodded. "Publicly, yes." "No," the Emperor corrected. "Psychologically." The chamber quieted further. Lucian studied the replay carefully, then spoke slowly. "The resentment is visible." That caught the Emperor's attention. "Continue." Lucian folded his hands behind his back. House Rain expected obedience, tradition, symbolism. Kenny rejected all 3 publicly before even entering the games. The projection replayed the kick again. Lucian continued. "He fights differently, speaks differently, carries himself differently. He openly denounces aspects of their ideology." One council member frowned. "You believe the boy hates his own bloodline?" Lucian looked toward the screen. "I believe he resents them." The Emperor's expression shifted slightly, not softer, interested. Behind him, another advisor finally spoke. "If that is true, perhaps the games themselves may solve our Rain problem naturally." The Emperor laughed quietly. Nobody else did. "Natural solutions," Caius Vale said, "are fantasies told by weak rulers." He turned back toward the screen. "No, If Kenny survives long enough, he becomes dangerous regardless of his loyalties. Lucian's eyes remained thoughtful. Not necessarily. The Emperor looked toward him again. Lucian chose his next words carefully. Based on his behavior, there exists the possibility that Kenny Rain may become useful. And several council members reacted immediately. One actually stepped forward. Useful? Lucian ignored the interruption. The speech after the challenge was not directed at the Empire. The projection replayed Kenny's face. I am not like them. Lucian pointed toward the image. That was personal. The Emperor stared at the screen, then finally said what several council members had been thinking but were too terrified to voice. So what are you suggesting? Silence settled across the Hall of Dominion. Lucian answered calmly. In time? Perhaps an alliance? Several council members immediately began speaking at once. With a reign? That bloodline nearly controls independent fold sectors already. They would overthrow Earth within generations. The Emperor raised one hand. The chamber fell silent instantly. Caius Vale stepped closer to Lucian. You want me to approach the son of House Rain? Not yet, Lucian replied. The Emperor's eyes narrowed. Then when? Lucian looked back toward Kenny's image on the projection. When we are certain he truly hates them. The room quieted again, because suddenly the possibility felt real. Not likely, not safe, but real. House Rain had become the Empire's greatest long-term threat decades ago. Every Eclipse victory granted territory, resources, military expansion, population growth, and independent planetary authority. The Rain family already controlled enough worlds to rival smaller governments. Worse still, people loved them, especially frontier worlds abandoned by the Empire during the later expansion years. House Rain ruled brutally, but efficiently, and efficient brutality had always been dangerously attractive to frightened civilizations. The Emperor returned slowly toward his throne. The old patriarch grows ambitious. Lucian nodded. Cassian Rain believes the Empire has become weak. He is correct, one council member muttered. The Emperor turned his head slightly. The councilman immediately paled. Caius Vale smiled faintly. Careful. The man nearly collapsed, apologizing. The Emperor sat once more upon the obsidian throne. Continue. Lucian activated another projection. This one displayed a map of human-controlled space. At the center sat Earth and the Imperial core systems, but around the outer sectors, Rain influence spread like cracks through glass. Varanth, Soulgrave, Idon Reach, then smaller dependent colonies, trade alliances, security fleets, military contracts, private Foldgate patrol systems. The Empire had allowed House Rain to grow powerful because the family protected dangerous frontier routes during unstable decades. Now the Empire feared what they had created. Lucian pointed toward the map. If House Rain wins another eclipse, he did not finish the sentence. He didn't need to. Everyone in the chamber understood. Another planet meant another resource system, another military hub, another loyal population, another expansion point. And Kenny Rain? Kenny was already becoming more famous than his father ever was. That terrified them most, because Lord Rain inspired fear. Kenny inspired obsession. There was a difference. One councilwoman spoke carefully. If he truly opposes his family, perhaps he could fracture their internal structure. Lucian nodded once. Exactly. The Emperor leaned back slowly. You wish to turn the heir against the dynasty. Lucian met his gaze. I believe the process may have already begun. The chamber fell silent again. The projection replayed Kenny's speech one final time. I am different. The Emperor stared at the image for a long moment, then finally smiled. It was not a pleasant expression. Interesting. Far away from Earth, far away from the obsidian throne and the political predators whispering beneath false stars. Kenny Rain sat inside the transport rail leaving Arena District 3. Pines lounged across the opposite seat, holding a luxury sponsor crate against his chest like a child protecting stolen treasure. Lyra sat beside the transport window watching the neon city blur past outside. None of them knew the Empire itself had just begun discussing Kenny like a possible weapon. None of them knew the most powerful government in human history was considering turning him against his own bloodline. But somewhere deep beneath the artificial lights of Astrovault, the first threads of that future had already started tightening. The transport rail descended toward the luxury district access routes, while giant projection screens overhead replayed Kenny's bare-handed challenge victory for the entire city. Again, again, again. The city could not stop watching him, and neither could the Empire. The transport rail moved silently through the upper districts of Astrovault. Outside the windows, the city no longer...
Hurry up!